What's going on, guys? Zephyr here, and today I just want to bring something to your attention that's interesting, and I'm going to go over how I did it, why this is important for the future, and I want to give a lot of thanks for the creators of what I'm going to be showing in this video. Probably obvious by the title and the thumbnail, but I want to hold on to the surprise. So, physical games and things like that, um, I will be dumping off of my Xbox, which is right there. Is modified. It's hacked. I want to go into how it's hacked, why it's hacked, and why I'm choosing to help and work towards emulation of the Xbox console. Um, for starters, the Xbox consoles are kind of notorious for hard drive failures. They're also pretty notorious for not being consistently powerful along every generation. There's a lot of different forms of Xboxes, different disk trays that some break, some don't. Different memory profiles, some are better than others. So some Xboxes are just better than other Xboxes for what feels like no apparent reason. Xbox was using DirectX back in the day, which is how they were able to have such great fidelity and things like that. But what made them really difficult is their onboard processing. A lot of people know that the PS3 was very difficult to emulate on, and that would be correct. It was very difficult to emulate on PC, but now we can emulate just about every game nearly perfectly without issue. So I want to do a let's play of the game Black, and I decided to dump my Xbox onto my PC. And I want to show you guys real quick what that looks like, um, how it works. And I don't want this to be like a guide per se of how to set up Xemu more because that already exists. Um, More how I did it and how I'm doing it, and recommendations for other people who are interested in getting into the project itself. So of course, my Xbox is hacked. Use a USB cable, receiver, and a controller port. And all I did was snip, connect the leads to the correct connection point, plugged it in. Well, I had this to put the Linux on it as well. It's just 1 gigabyte USB, so this would go in and then I put Linux and stuff on it. I needed to change the hard drive, which required a splitter Molex cable, which was pretty annoying, but ultimately I did get the updated hard drive in it and pretty much saved this system. The system was completely broken when I got it. The hard disk was completely dead. It could not load past a certain point without overheating. I believe it was like 15 to 20 minutes into a game. Typically, it would overheat. Um, and for some reason, I don't 100% know why, the graphical output was screwed up. Um, no matter what I did, that older TV that I keep behind me, which plays older games, um, it just would not work. It just would not output to the TV. It would not output to my capture card. And that's another thing is capturing an archival and let's plays of Xbox original content is very difficult. You can't just simply upscale it and output it to a capture card. You need specific capture cards that will accept RCA. Um, Not all of them work, not all of them capture correctly, not all of them are at the right frame rate. So you get a lot of glitching, weird effects, graphical bugs in the recording, but not on the game capture. And I have all kinds of modding cables and things like that. For like that has RGB plugged into it now. That goes to an HDMI upscaler and then outputs to that monitor, and it does work. The problem is when I do it on a splitter to then send a signal to my computer to then do a stream, the computer cannot recognize that signal. So um, that's been a huge problem in the gaming landscape of covering Xbox titles. Now, it's not to say that other people haven't found ways, but they're not sharing their secrets. They're not coming out and talking about it. So let's real quick jump into my desktop. Let's take a look at what I'm using. I'm not going to turn on the system or anything like that. I don't really feel like that's necessary for this video. I just want to cover my bases to show that how to emulate legally and what emulation really means for the future of gaming. By the way, a lot of developers and a lot of like big companies are using emulation, and you're buying into it on a regular basis without even knowing it. There's just a difference between home emulation and corporate emulation. Home emulation is your products being backed up and ran how you want them to be ran. Owning your license, using the same registry as your Xbox on your computer, and emulating that exact hardware is completely legal. That is not a problem. That's why I'm not afraid to play Yuzu and things like that on stream because I have a Switch. It's a broken Switch. The screen's broken on it. I can't use it. The dock, for some reason, doesn't output. So I dumped the content that switched to my PC, put it into Yuzu, and then Yuzu. That way I'm able to continue playing my Switch. I plug it into the computer when I need to, and I dump the ROMs off of the carts. Pretty straightforward stuff. No big deal. Anyways. Yeah, that works. I don't know why it always switches displays on me. If anybody knows why they switch displays, let me know. All right. So when you're on your PC, obviously you need to go to Xemu.com. This is assuming you've already modified your Xbox. Um, I believe it's called Rocky 5. Yes, right here. So for starters, this is Rocky 5. Um, find Rocky 5 just by Googling Rocky 5 Xbox soft modding tool. This is where you're going to need the cable and you're going to need a specific game in order to then load up the Linux hack. I use Splinter Cell Black Site, I believe it's called. Splinter Cell Black Site. I don't have it with me. Maybe I do. I do. Nope, just Splinter Cell. Just the first Tom Clancy Splinter Cell. So that will allow you to use Rocky 5 to then load up a fake profile, and that fake profile will then hack your Xbox. And you will need the soft modding tool and things like that to do that. And the hard drive mod and everything like that comes afterwards. If you're interested, I did a whole entire playlist on my TikTok of showing how to do this. TikTok can be found on the homepage, right hand corner. So I don't really want to get into all that because I already made content for that. So yeah, check out Rocky 5. Then on your PC, we're just going to use Xemu. I already have my Xemu installed. So this is Xemu. Just download it, and you'll find that Xemu does not work out of the gate. You're going to need a program called FileZilla, which is a FTP solution. This is a somewhat free. Um, it kind of just allows you to tunnel the hard drive on your Xbox and your PC to communicate. So I can move files from one location to another, and then I can use third-party software to then convert, say, an ISO file, which my Xbox doesn't need to convert anything. When it dumps it as a .x xc no xsi .iso. We'll see it when we go into the files. So yeah, this is what you'll need. You run this program. You'll connect your client to your slave. That is what it's called. That would be a slave drive. This is the client drive, the main drive, or however you want to look at it. And yeah, it FTPs and FTPSs into different servers, so you could connect it into your Google Drive and things like that, and move things around that way if you so please. But it allows you to connect two systems on your network together and move things around. FileZilla is actually pretty popular amongst the gaming space, moving around information into like an Xbox 360 or a Dreamcast or a GameCube, Wii's and things like that. That this can be very useful for manipulating code, moving files around, seeing how things work. So I recommend you check this out. Great, great software. As long as your system has FTP abilities, um, you're good to go. FTP, FTPS. Most modern hacks will have an FTP or FTPS client because it makes life so much easier, especially if you have your laptop in the living room connected to your Xbox and you're moving files from your server or your office, in my case, which my server is down here, like game backups and things like that. So your disks don't get damaged. So your laser doesn't burn out like mine did, or your mechanical drive doesn't burn out, or your rubber um, wheels inside of your drive can last longer and not decay. These are all very important. So the mechanical fan that was OEM can survive. It's just allows us to archive old hardware and make it last longer. So that in mind when thinking about emulation. I just want people to have the information on hand about emulation before they judge emulation because I feel like a lot of people jump down the throats of content creators and streamers for using emulation without really understanding why they would choose emulation. I very often emulate PS2 titles, even if I have a free boot PS2 with a hard drive mod right here. The reason why I choose to use emulation is upscaling, stretching, interpolation, all kinds of stuff that just allow me to create a more cinematic approach to a game. So, say I'm playing Metal Gear Solid, Liberty Walker, I believe that's what it's called, and I think it's too pixelated. I think it needs more anti-aliasing. It would have no anti-aliasing. I want to add, say, different lighting. I can't do that per se on my PS2. Of course, if I can get into a debug menu, learn the code, and put two controllers in and run the code as arbitrary code execution, I could eventually create that and then compile it onto a hard drive and then run it as an ISO or something like that. But that would be really, really, really complicated when I could just emulate it, run something like RTGI, reshade, and just add more lighting effects. So, something for you to consider when you are considering emulation, especially from a streamer's perspective or a content creator's perspective. There's more behind the scenes for some cinematic things. For example, when I played Bioshock, I did a reshade and I kind of fixed some of the colors and I made it pop a little bit more. I went more towards the neon punk versus the more steampunk aesthetic. Um, I was more happy seeing a lot more of the popping colors from the neon and things like that, and the sparks, fire. I just thought it made the game a little bit more gravitas, especially when it came to the third one, Bioshock Infinite, where using a little bit of RTGI, I was able to do reshading for rate like basic race tracing, and it really just added a big flavor to the game, and it was much more interesting to view a cinematic perspective. And being able to do that with your older games, say PS2, Xbox original era, is huge for the content space, especially when it comes to making videos about a game. So educational people to then capture some of that in-game renders and things like that very easily. It'll open it up to debugging, manual coding, and things like that without damaging existing hardware, existing disks, without damaging old technology. We can allow them to continuing functioning as intended, and we can hold on and keep that technology around. Um, it also decreases our carbon footprint and things like that, allowing emulation to work, pushing these things forward. We don't need as much mass garbage produced. We don't need 30 consoles to run one thing. Um, how it is. So let's get into Xemu itself before I take your head off with my rant. So I already have Xemu, and this is relation folder here. So everything you see, I own. I own a PSP. It's on that shelf. It's a God of War one. I dumped all the data for it to run PSP. However, I believe PSP nowadays you don't need to. I don't know if I recently updated or not. Um, a lot of emulators are running independent code. They're not the original source code or anything like that. They have been rewritten completely and therefore are completely legal. So if you're running an emulator that requires, say, a BIOS or something like that, there is somebody out there trying to create a simulated BIOS. This is what happened in the PS1 space with um, EPSXE being one of the most popular emulators on the market. And then let me grab it. Don't use it anymore, but I'm pretty sure I have just have my um I believe it was made by the same team that did RCPCS3. They created an emulator, PCSX Reloaded. There we go. Simulated PSX BIOS. So put that in a bad spot. Um, yeah, they have a simulated BIOS that allows you to not require a PS1 from Sony. This is a piece of software that is completely independent from Sony. They have no legal authority to take this down because it is their own code, their own execution. They have their rights to produce it just as much as Sony has their rights to produce it. This is not a physical medium that is stealing any information. This is not piracy. This is its own independent thing. And you might be saying to yourself, well, it runs PS1 games, therefore it's wrong. But even that would be incorrect if you understand the importance of archival work and why the law would side with archivalists and emulation people, because we are purchasing our own products, we are holding onto our own products, and we are choosing to play them as we see fit because they are no longer legally holded or held by the companies who produced it and might allow you to run it, so that OEM or proprietary software no longer falls within legal range of piracy. It's no longer up to the developers what you do with that product. Where you do get into some discourse is like online games, modifying, hacking, that kind of stuff. That is very much its own thing. Not discussing that. And I disown people who are in support of that. So when you have your Xbox plugged into FileZilla, what you're going to want to do is dump your BIOS, boot ROM, flash ROM, and your hard disk information. BIOS and things like that are the complex 4627 bins. These sometimes need to be aggregated. There is software to do it, but it's kind of sketchy and I don't want to show it in this video. So if you're a developer or somebody in coding, if you could work with Rocky 5 or the code of Rocky 5 to produce a better launcher, something that you can maybe build into Rocky 5 so people can properly dump their stuff, I would greatly appreciate that. And maybe you can do it so that way it runs and converts everything manually, because some of this was kind of a pain in the ass to get, like the MCPX. Uh, really annoying. So we now have server-side updates. Not we, because I didn't make this. But as you can see, the Xbox is booting up like it normally would. There's some weird audio ticks and things like that within the audio, but I find that's actually pretty normal. We're gonna go ahead. So I want to play black, which right here, and you'll see it says fixed. So this needed to be ran through a dump repair. Right here, Xemu redump repair. Some of these are from VIMs. This was a lot of me testing the waters and how it would function and things like that. So I could produce this video and really showcase how cool it is that we have Xemu running on PC these days, because I feel like it's a very left in the dust kind of emulation software. A lot of people thought, oh, we're never going to have Xbox available on PC. So this was made by Smokey McGames, which I'm pretty sure is a YouTuber. Yes, support me on YouTube. Smokey McGames has 546 subs, so he's a little bit bigger than me. I really appreciate him for working on this. He does coding stuff. He does playthrough stuff. He seems like a good dude. Somebody who I'd like to talk to at some point. Xenia. Xenia is Xbox 360. Yep. That's cool. So he's working on Xenia. I'll have to do a follow-up at one of these days on Xenia. So you would dump your game and then you can fix it if it doesn't work. So that fixed file is my Xbox. I just marked it as USA just in case I want to dump like a PAL version or something, because that is important. Region differences still affect emulators unless they are coded out or coded in to no longer have those problems. Don't worry about it. Not a big deal, especially if you're just not going to dump yourself and you're just going to go on eBay, buy the game for $2, and then download it from, say, Vimslayer or something like that, which to me is completely fine. Like, I know a lot of people think, oh, well, you just can't download the game. That's piracy. And I would argue, as long as you own the game, you don't have to go through all the trouble of modding and dumping your system. I don't see the point in having your MAC address and your serial address and everything match up. Like, why do the fingerprints need to be identical? That really doesn't make any sense to me, because you still own the hardware regardless. So playing your games regardless matter. But that's just how I feel. I know other people will feel different. XISO is the file I was talking about. So I want to play Black. I'll load my Black disk. And now we can have hexadecimal lines and things like that, so we can get real-time monitoring. And again, I typically have issues. So we have our different UI scales and things like that. Our scales we can change. Go ahead and turn that down. And as you can see, it looks really good. And I have no issues getting anything to work. I mean, obviously you're going to need to follow some tutorials on how to actually allocate your files and everything like that. It's not that straightforward. When you go into your system files, you need to create folders and get your correct complexes and your HDD bins and your EEPROMs and things like that. So they'll load. So you can have like 128 for homebrew applications. You can set up a internet connection so I can host and people can connect to me and things like that, which is pretty cool. So you can play multiplayer. You can set up lobbies and old Call of Duty and things like that on the Xbox Emu. So yeah, that's really about it. I just really wanted to show off that we have come this far as a community in the emulation space. My main thing in emulation space has always been checking lighting, checking glitches, doing QA work for the fun of it, and then posting bugs and fixes, things like that that can be implemented to make their software better. I'm not a programmer. I'm not somebody who can do that kind of stuff. I'm not very good at any of that stuff, to be completely honest. My main thing is archival work, organization of files, making sure things can move around seamlessly and be created seamlessly. But yeah, if you're interested in Xemu and archival work and things, hop on eBay, pick up a broken Xbox, see if you can get the files off of the hard drive. It's very easy. If you can get the files off the hard drive, you can typically go ahead and start your Xemu emulator. I can't advocate any other way of doing it on YouTube. Know what I'm talking about. Other access ports exist. But go support Xemu. This project's really important for the archival work of the Xbox original. There are a lot of exclusives on the Xbox original that we cannot play currently. there are a lot of games that we just simply do not have access to because of this limitation. And I'm sure there's going to be people in the comment section saying there's a lot of Xboxes that are all over the place. Xbox 360s were backwards compatible. Xbox Ones have Xbox One games. You can get Xbox games on Windows Store. And you're correct. All of those things are completely true. But they're all not running off of a simulation of the original hardware. They're not going to play identically. Um, there are things that we can do within emulation to give you that authentic childhood feel that normal games do or different consoles cannot do, which is fine. If you want to use that argument and that leverage, that's cool. But it should be stated that the Xbox 360, Xbox One, and PC will be running some form of emulation, anyways, that is proprietary to Windows and Microsoft. We know this to be true. It's not difficult to research or look into, so take that into consideration before you use that argument that these are companies producing emulations. Anyways, that's it from me. I love this project. I thought it was super cool. Like I said, I did a TikTok walkthrough and breakdown of this. This took me months to put together and record. So hopefully you guys find it as interesting as I did. And let me know, are you going to learn how to use FTP and FTP servers for your gaming setups? Will you be modifying your consoles? All of my consoles are modified, every single one of them. I don't have a single unmodified console in my house. I just find it more fascinating to crack these things open and run homebrew and things like that on them. Kind of like modern vintage gamer. He's a big inspiration for me. I think the only thing in my entire library that is not modified is my Game Boy SP. Even that has an Evercart in it, modified. But yeah, get out there, archive. Let's keep games a lot around for other generations because believe it or not, other generations want to play older games. Anyways, bye. Subscribe.